Hello, BookTube. I went back to downtown Boston today, early in the morning when Frida was still very sleepy and the whole world was quiet, but the subway was still rumbling along. And I was happy that the rain seemed to hold off. It's raining now, and it looks from the weather like it's going to rain all afternoon and all evening, and then maybe when the temperature goes down, it might snow a little, and then it'll turn back to rain and rain for a good deal rest of the night and morning. Um, I don't get the impression this is going to be much. I think it's mostly going to be rain, and I think it's going to be over tomorrow. But one way or another, I was very glad that it held off. I thought for a minute yesterday, I thought, oh, there's no way I can avoid this appointment, and I don't want to be going out. It's bad enough leaving at all. I don't want to be going out in the rain, but it held off, so the morning was clear enough, so that the Brattle could have its sale carts out. One of the things I check with them about, if it looks like I'm going to be in their neck of the woods, and if it looks like there's dodgy weather, I always check to see, what are you thinking? Are you thinking maybe you will uncover the sale lot, or... And I actually don't know why I do that. I do that regularly. I've been doing that for years, and I don't know why I do it, because I go there anyway. I go there anyway for the conviviality, to look around inside. The inside of the shop is not that much more expensive than the outside, the sale lot. I go anyway, but I ask every time. And in the morning, the sale books were uncovered, so I went, and I was a little tired, and I browsed, and I found some stuff. I didn't find 20-something books like I did the last time. I found just a handful. And the handful is even smaller than it might otherwise be, because a few of the things I found are presents for you. So I'm not going to show them and ruin the surprise. But that still leaves us with 5 books to show, which is a normal-sized book haul. I should point out, 20 books is abnormal. And the first one is along the same lines of something that I showed you last time. I showed you last time The Rise of Roscoe Payne, by an author named Joseph Lincoln, a Cape Cod author named Joseph Lincoln, who wrote a whole shelf full of books, and who very much intended them to be pleasure reading, escapist reading, light fiction. Good, intelligent, but light, and with a happy ending, or multiple happy endings. And The Rise of Roscoe Payne is my favorite of his books, and I think it was made into a movie. He was once a very well-known, popular author. He's completely forgotten now, but once upon a time, he was well known. And if I remember correctly, another one of his books that was made into a movie was the one I found today, also with the dust jacket, also that somebody went to the bother of putting one of those plastic library covers over, so that I don't have to worry about this thing. It'll last as long as it needs to. And this is Dr. Nye. See that? Somebody had this in an old hardcover and just decided to make it as good as they could, and that's just great. I was kind of hoping when I saw The Rise of Roscoe Payne that there would be other Joseph Lincoln books that would show up, and this one did. I seem to remember this one being... I haven't read this in forever, so it's going to be a lot of fun to discover it again. I seem to remember this being a little darker than a lot of Lincoln's books. But the title character goes back to his little village on Cape Cod after having left in disgrace under the cloud of suspicion of having stolen money from the church. And he comes back and slowly starts to put down roots again, even faced with backbiting rumors and outright hostility. And there's a love affair that goes on between 2 young people that is the other plot in the book. And I confess, the love affair between the 2 young people was the thing I remember. And I feel certain that when I reread this, it's going to be the subtlety of the plot about Dr. Nye that gets to me. I'm sure that's the part I'm going to like the most now. Quite apart from, the obvious question that is raised. For instance, if you've ever read The Last Chronicle of Barset by Anthony Trollope, then you'll know all about a big novel that is built around the subject of whether or not money was stolen. Quite apart from the question of whether or not it actually is true, whether or not the doctor is actually guilty, I feel certain that I'm gonna like those aspects of it, the grown-up aspects of it, a lot more this time around. Very happy to find it. I don't think my luck will hold out. I don't think that I'll find a whole collection of Joseph Lincoln, but I'll take what I can find. Then this next one is a work of nonfiction. It actually belongs on this bookcase behind me. Aside from that top shelf, this bookcase behind me is dedicated to books about literature, about books, about reading and writing. And this is a classic of that kind from, 70 years ago? 80 years ago? When did this first come out? 1942. So that's a long time. That's 75 years. That's a long time. And I believe this might have been its author's first book. This is Alfred Kazin, who went on to become a famous and lionized, revered critic, literary historian, literary journalist, that sort of thing. And this is his, I believe, first book on native grounds. Just a narrative of American prose fiction, American prose works, fiction and nonfiction, that has its own quirks. This author is about as close as I come to formal literary criticism. So this book has its own quirks along those lines, but it's mainly just very lively reading. A lot of you will know, some of you will know this author from other works, and he can be very, very engaging company on the page, and that is true in this book. But I read this eons ago, and ever since then I've only read little bits and pieces on particular writers or particular movements, and I don't plan on doing that this time around. Before it gets entombed on this bookcase, I plan on just reading the whole of this, read it straight through from beginning to end, and see what I make of it. This next one is something I've never seen before. The other day when I did my Brattle haul, I showed you a little mass market paperback by the great Irish short story writer Frank O'Connor, and I found this, Kings, Lords, and Commons. It's a collection of Irish verse, translated by O'Connor with notes and essays and whatnot by him. I don't think I knew that this volume even existed, and it's going to be a treat. It's going to be a treat to get used to this, see what this author is like in a register that I don't know at all. Then we'll do the next one's another Cape Cod book, only much more recent. This is The Salt House: A Summer on the Dunes of Cape Cod by Cynthia Huntington, and this came out just a few years ago. This is 1999, so it came out before I got back into book reviewing. I would certainly have been all over this. I would certainly have wanted a copy from the publisher. I would have written about it somewhere, somehow, and enjoyed the heck out of it. I don't actually write right now for any venue on Cape Cod. I write for the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, an island off the coast of Cape Cod. But I don't right now write for any Cape Cod venue. Maybe I would have found one this is, if I remember correctly, this is a memoir of a woman who takes up residence in an unweatherized salt house up on stilts right on the beach. So these are the kinds of houses, they still exist. They're rarer and rarer, but these are the kinds of houses that you can't occupy in any but one season, usually. There are some houses all across Cape Cod that are still unweatherized. So they are mainly summer houses. They're not meant to be, the Cape can be quite inhospitable in winter. You don't want to be living in a house there that has no running water and no heat, no electricity of any kind. I seem to remember that this thing wanders all over creation, that it's not just, it's a very poetic evocation of Cape Cod, but it wanders all over the author's personal story as well. Not that I mind if an author does that really well. But as you can tell, I haven't read this in a while. I haven't read it since it first came out. So, and I'm always up for reading books about Cape Cod, whether it's the old Cape Cod that everybody says is long gone, or the new Cape Cod where everybody says is long gone. Then the final book that we'll do here, not a 30-minute, 40-minute video, not 20 books. The final one we'll do is The Find of the Day. And it's also Frank O'Connor. My favorite thing by this author, the thing that I have read and reread and lived by, is his big collection of short stories. He is one of the great Irish short story writers. And the only problem that I've had with that, some of you will know the American version of the collected short stories that I'm talking about. It's got a bar on the cover, it's white, a white trade paperback, and the only problem that I've had with it is that it's poorly made. So I've had to replace it many times, not because I gave it away to somebody. I've given away plenty of copies of the thing, but not because I gave it away, but because I would just read it. I would make it fall apart. It would crack or break into segments or whatnot. And in all that time where I was replacing those volumes, getting them from bookstores and used bookstores and charity shops, I never saw a hardcover, and I found one today. I found the collected stories today in a hardcover. So I don't need to worry about it anymore. I just put this, I have a shelf right over there for great short story collections. I'll just put this there. But before I do that, I will certainly sample something. I will certainly sample quite a few of these stories. He's in all of the Irish short story anthologies. You couldn't make one without him. And he has that big volume of his own, this big volume. And now I don't, as soon as I got back here with this thing this morning, I looked on my shelves to see, all right, do you have a battered trade paperback of this, or is this one of the many periods where you don't, where you're just in between volumes because you destroyed the last copy? It turns out I am in between volumes. So this is not a replacement. This is something I actually needed for this room. And that's great. It's always great when a couple of things that I get at any Brattle voyage are things that I know are coming into this room, things that I know are keepers. Though that's an extra pleasure, especially if these are dirt. These were all dirt cheap, so I didn't need to worry about anything. So, so that is all that I can show you. There are 4 or 5 other books, but they are presents for people, so I don't want to show them on camera. But for myself, presents for myself, there was the Collected Stories of Frank O'Connor. There was the Salt House, a Cape Cod memoir. There was Kings, Lords, and Commons, also Frank O'Connor, here in the Poetry Register. There's On Native Grounds by Alfred Kazan, his great study of American literature. I think it's safe to call it great. I don't think there'd be many people who'd argue with that, especially now. And finally, Dr. Nye by Joseph Lincoln, a hardcover with a dust jacket of a Joseph Lincoln novel. That's fantastic. That's 2 that I've found in 2 visits to the Brattle. That is great. So plenty of stuff to root around in, and of these, the Kazan and the Frank O'Connor are coming in here. So not a bad ratio. Even the Cape Cod book may make its way in here if it really impresses me more than it did the first time. We shall see. Anyway, that was my Brattle trip. Won't be going back to the Brattle for a little bit, so I was very glad that they were open, that the rain hadn't shuttered them, and now the rain is here. So I think the rain is going to be followed by a dip in temperature, but it doesn't matter. I have deadlines all weekend long, so I'm not going to be out gallivanting anyway. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.